Welcome to episode 6 of Origins Unknown podcast. We're so excited to be back. I'm Claire Huntington.
And I'm Chris Holt. This week we spoke to Jeremy Clark. He and his wife Nicole adopted 4 children from Bulgaria with alternative needs. We will also hear about his experience with international adoption. This is one of those moments for Claire and I where we realize that we as people can always do more. We also found it very interesting to hear about the time it takes for an international adoption to be completed.
As the world has shifted from face-to-face interaction to Zoom calls and social distancing, we're at the mercy of technology. During the course of the interview, Jeremy's Wi-Fi signal lagged and there's some hiccups in the audio as you'll hear.
Claire and I reviewed our options and decided the authentic story and compelling nature of this first interview couldn't be replicated. It is with that in mind that we have chosen to go ahead with the less than perfect interview recording. As adoptees, we often strive for perfection. So this was a really hard call for Chris and I to make. We hope that you enjoy Jeremy's extremely incredible story. We would also like to shout out Aaron, or Brass Tacks, for being our second Patreon subscriber at the top tier, Down with OUP tier. Thank you for your support on all our social media platforms and being Patreon subscriber OG number 2. Enjoy!
I think I walked the long way home. Now the phone just pick me up and hold me close when things get rough. And you never walk the road alone, 'cause we've all got our origins unknown.
Here we are. Welcome to Origins Unknown podcast. My name is Chris Holt.
I'm Claire Huntington, and with us today we have
Jeremy Clark.
All right. So just a little backstory before we get into this discussion. Jeremy and I know each other from a CrossFit gym that essentially, I guess we swapped roles. He was on his way out. I was on my way in. And so that's how we know each other. We've been in the CrossFit community for many, many years. So we align on a lot of things when it comes to wellness, fitness, and all that stuff. All right. So Jeremy, if you want to, for our listeners, for people who are viewing on YouTube, if you just want to introduce yourself and tell us a little about your situation.
Absolutely. My name is Jeremy Clark, born and raised in Houston, Texas. Been living in Salt Lake City for 15 years now. My wife and I decided to grow our family through adoption, and we've adopted 4 boys with special needs from Bulgaria. Their ages are 10, 9, 8, and 7. And I've been to Bulgaria 6 times, and she's been there 4 times. So I went solo a couple times to pick up the boys.
Wow. It's like, it's such a heavy sentence. You're like, I'm trying to process this. Like, what? If not just 1, not 2, not 3, 4. Okay. So if you want to maybe just explain to us also specifically with your 4 boys, like their I guess situation specifically.
Yeah,
I guess.
Absolutely. Oldest Alex has Down syndrome. He's 10 years old. And then our 2 middle boys, John and David, they have cerebral palsy. And then our youngest, Simon, has Down syndrome as well. So we have 2 with Down syndrome and 2 with cerebral palsy. And we've adopted all of them between the ages of 3 and 5. So started in 2014 and brought Simon home in 2018.
Wow.
Right. Okay, so we have so much to unpack, but
there's a lot. Org chart.
Yeah, I know, right? What I do want to, I guess, for all our listeners and viewers, Jeremy is definitely going to be, I think, one of our first adoption stories. I think everything else has been interviews or just me and Claire. So we're excited about this.
He's also our first adoptive parent outlook. So
Yes.
This is going to not only be an entire different facet of adoption, you're going to be a totally different outlook. Also, you're going to be a different outlook from most adoptive parents as well.
I wonder.
Right. That's the great thing about adoption. You guys mentioned in another episode is there's closed, there's open, there's international, special needs. There's all different avenues and routes that families can go to grow their family. So I just like to be a voice for those that have questions regarding, maybe a similar situation they're looking to grow their family.
I love that terminology as well, to grow your family.
Yeah.
So often we've been hearing in the adoption community is that children are seen as a blank slate to fit into your family. And I love the fact that you're growing your family with pre-assembled, pieces versus trying to slot them in. I really like the way that you're phrasing that, especially coming from an adoptee.
Oh yeah,
Absolutely.
It makes me feel all warm inside. It's like
I'm literally already planning all of their Christmas presents. You're like giving me their ages. I'm like, okay, so which Avengers is each? Simon sounds like he's going to be like Iron Man. I don't know. That's what I'm thinking.
Love that. Absolutely.
Could you tell us about your specific adoption stories of each of your kids?
Yeah. So my wife and I went to India in 2012 one summer to go visit orphans and through our church and take care of orphans and read to them and play with them and all, just learn all about the Indian culture there. And while we were there, we just felt a need that we can do more. And so we wanted to open our home up for children, and we wanted to go the route of India. Unfortunately, that wasn't the case based off of our age and based off of the years of marriage. And so we decided to look outside of India and see which countries we would qualify for. I told you guys about Africa, Congo specifically, and unfortunately that fell through, and we were then moved to Bulgaria, and we started the process for our son Alex. And that was about a year-long process to adopt him. And in Bulgaria, there's 2 travel trips. The first trip you go and visit for a week, and on about day 3 or 4, you decide if you want to continue with the adoption. And we definitely did. We signed all the papers saying, yes, we want to move forward with it, flew back to the States, and about 6 months we waited for the approval to go back and finish the paperwork and bring Alex home. So we brought him home in July of 14. And that was probably, people always ask, what's the hardest part? What was the hardest part in the adoption process? And it was that very first adoption, because we didn't have kids at home. We weren't very busy other than our full-time jobs. And so the rest of our time, we were just sitting, waiting, wondering how he's doing. And, why can't this be any faster? Because we're ready to bring him home, but we understand the paperwork has to be done and make sure that it's official. And so once we got that call, we jumped on a plane and went over as quickly as we could to bring Alex home. Brought him home in 2014, about a year after having him home. We decided, let's move forward with another adoption. And since we enjoyed Bulgaria so much, the process was very smooth. We met some great people while we were there. We love the culture and the food and the people. And so let's just stick with what we know. We got 2 referrals rather than 1. And we said, if we adopt one of these little boys, the other one is not going to get adopted. Is there a way we could move forward with both of the boys at once? They're not biologically related. They weren't in any part near each other at all, the country. And our adoption agency checked, and they said, yeah, absolutely. Let's go. We'll send it to the government and see if they approve it. They said yes. And so then we moved forward with John and David. Both of the boys have cerebral palsy. And their orphanage experiences were very different. John, the older of the 2, he was in an orphanage that you would read about online that it's not very good, where they don't take care of the children very well. And there's a lot of kids and not a lot of staff. And it just wasn't a very good experience for him for his first 4 years of his life. David, on the other hand, was in an orphanage that you could tell they cared for each and every one of the children, and they wanted them to thrive either in the orphanage that they're going to be in for however long, or once they do get adopted, that they're already set in the best way that they can for whatever family comes for them. And we traveled in 2016 for John and David. And right when we got John, from the difficult orphanage, we had to go straight to the ER because he was dehydrated, well under the weight he should be. And we spent 4 days. My wife spent 4 days in the hospital with John, and I spent 4 days in the hotel with David. And then once he was healthy enough to travel back home, we all traveled home. We had 3 now, and we were adjusting to life as parents of 3 kids with special needs, and all that entailed, right? And about a year later, while I was with David, while we were with David in the orphanage for travel trip number 1, I noticed his roommate was a little baby with Down syndrome. And I jokingly said, if that little boy doesn't have a family and he becomes available for international adoption, let us know, because I'll adopt him. Of course, 2 years later, I see him on a website. It looks exactly like the kid that I said, just a couple years older. I double checked with the agency and said, yes, that he's in the same hometown, the same orphanage. And I said, all right, well, I said yes. We do want to continue to grow our family. Let's move forward with this little boy, Simon. And unfortunately, my wife was so busy with our 3 that if I was going to move forward with the 4th adoption, I would need to go by myself because you need home. So travel trip number 1, I spent a week in Bulgaria, just Simon and I. And then travel trip number 2, I brought him home. We traveled. I traveled back with Simon. And so that was a fun experience and opportunity for me and Simon to grow in that time, just father-son bonding.
The baby of the family.
And the interesting thing.
The baby of the family, hey?
The interesting thing. The baby, he loves his position. Even though he's the baby and the youngest, he thinks he's the leader. So
I already identify with Simon right now. I'm getting strong Simon vibes. I'm Team Simon.
He's a hamster. He loves it. So fun thing. Well, interesting part about that was in David and Simon's orphanage, I was able to talk with the director there of the orphanage, and she said that David and Simon were the only only children adopted out of their orphanage in the past, 8 years, and you're the only family, that has been here in 8 years. They said before you, there was an Italian family, and other than that, we haven't seen anybody for any of the children, and there were dozens of children there, and David and Simon were the only 2 with special needs. The rest were typical children. And so they were just really surprised that of all the children to be adopted, it was 2 kids with special needs and from the same family. And so I just think that's really, it's great.
That's
so
amazing.
maybe one day, once they're adults, we could all travel back and kind of see their stomping grounds,
BRB going to Bulgaria.
I know, right?
And that is a really interesting topic too. And we're going to delve into it in later episodes. The history of, it's not necessarily a stigma, but the rarity of adoption in America in itself before the 1930s, 40s and whatnot, that adoption wasn't a prevalent thing until children started to be, I hate to say it, but marketed as commodities. And so it's just even in that, a blank slate, like children in America were literally being advertised in Christmas ads. Like, do you want your Christmas baby? And there's very little difference between marketing children as dolls and whatnot. And so it's even edified in the fact that they're shocked that your beautiful children were being, the ones being adopted. And it just shows how wonderful of an experience this has been, not only for your children, but for you and adoption as a whole. So I think it's really interesting. And I'm already picturing going to Bulgaria right now.
Speaking of which, what does that plane trip itinerary look like from here?
So Salt Lake goes straight to Europe. I think there's 6 different places in Europe. And then from there, it's usually a straight shot. So I've been to Charles de Gaulle and Paris, and then from there straight to Bulgaria, Netherlands, Amsterdam. I went through Turkey one time, so that was that was fun going to Istanbul. Yeah. I haven't been through England. I went through Poland one time, and
Poland. I've been to Warsaw. It's the most beautiful city. Like, oh my gosh, like amazing. Wow, it's so awesome. Like, I don't know how else to put it. And I think it's kind of interesting that, you know, Alex and Simon are both autistic. So with Simon, you almost felt like, yeah.
I think, is one autistic and one has Down syndrome?
Yeah. So I know I get confused all the time too. So Alex and Simon both have Down syndrome, but Alex,
Down syndrome.
He hasn't. Oh, you're fine. Alex actually has a dual diagnosis of Down syndrome with autism as well. Okay. So people want to ask me, but they don't want to offend me. And I'm like, guys, I'm an open book, you know, as long as, you know, I'm trying to educate, but, you know, go ahead and ask your question. They said, well, Alex is older. He's 10 years old and Simon is younger. He's 7. But it seems to me that Simon seems higher functioning. Are there different levels of cognition within people with Down syndrome? Like, absolutely, right? Yeah. Just like there's different levels of cognition for anybody, right? Yeah. You know, like it can happen with.
That's such a great way to put it.
Yeah, and so like, you know what? I'm street smart. I'm not book smart. Vice versa, whatever, right? Mm-hmm. So like Alex, he's extremely loving and cuddly, while Simon is just full on, you know, go the whole time. And so like, I just explained, like, we all have different strengths and weaknesses and areas we need to grow in. And so like Alex is just happy to be hanging out with everybody. And Simon is more what you would classify or what maybe you've seen in the movies of people with Down syndrome. So
just even getting a wonderful overview of your family, it becomes abundantly clear that their alternative needs are very different. There's cognitive, there's physical needs in terms of accessibility. What resources would you recommend to other parents with children with alternative needs that are prospective, or, you know, just what resources in general would you recommend to parents who are considering this avenue?
There's a really strong adoption community online. And I've used, you know, Bulgarian adoptions, for example, within Facebook, and then I've used special needs adoption. And then there's Down syndrome adoption, and there's cerebral palsy adoption. And then within cerebral palsy, the more you know about the diagnosis, you can find other families that have children with the similar needs. And that's one avenue to go. Another is, you know, to check what options and are offered through the state. And so talking with representatives like the special education teachers or the special education district administrators, because they have tons of resources there. The local universities, if you go to the departments for special education, all the students are learning all about the different needs of each student and some of the resources in the community. It seems to me that there's a lot more within a denser population, like a larger city, than more of a rural area. So a lot of families either live rural and drive in for services, or just try to stay closer to the city so that they can have some of those services like the speech, the occupational therapy, the physical therapy, and have options for their child. So, well,
I will say that, you know, the internet is good for something. You know, I think it totally connects people, and there are, you know, as much as I have always just kind of been not into Facebook, I've realized now that there are just so many support groups on Facebook that you can't find on other social media platforms. So I think that that's really amazing.
Also, Discord has become another prevalent.
I would agree. Like, there's a lot of really bad stuff out there. Yeah. But if you can get locked into some really good groups, and they're open, they're honest, and they're pretty friendly too. You know, that sure that they keep it appropriate for the topic, and you know, the administrators within the groups, you know, will remove anybody that needs to be removed.
Yeah, for sure. Okay, so we're going to kind of go back and forth between Claire and I to ask you some questions. So What was the driving force, if any, behind pursuing the adoption of children with alternative needs?
Absolutely. So my wife and I, we met in college. We both finished college with being debt free. So we decided to start saving one income and living on the other for a large purchase. And as we were saving that large chunk, we decided adoption had always been on our heart. And we decided, let's grow our family with adoption first, and then move on with biological, having biological children. And once we adopted one, we realized the need there in that country to continue to open our home to other children. And it just kind of snowballed and continued to bring more and more children into our home. And now we have 4. And so I don't know if we ever necessarily planned on a family of 4, but we're obviously as happy as we can be with the situation that we have. And it's just been a great opportunity to be a voice for adoption in that way. So special needs specifically, my master's degree is in adaptive physical education. So I've spent hours all throughout my undergrad and my graduate schooling for working with people with special needs. And then my wife is a nurse, pediatric oncology. And so she's always loved children. And we thought, what better way to serve children that may have medical needs than her skills in nursing and mine in special education. And that just felt like the right route to go for our family.
Yeah, you guys are like a super team. It's like...
I'm literally sitting here thinking, it's like, what did you do between the 2014 and 2018? You're like, I actually positively impacted the lives of 4 children, my wife and I. And I'm like,
what did I do?
I painted some paintings that I didn't finish.
It's like, I did Murph a lot of times. I don't know. Oh, man.
Like, shave the back of my head. I got nothing. Okay. Well...
With regards to, real quick, just Bulgaria, like what led you or kind of got you kind of tuned into that country specifically?
Yeah, we actually didn't plan on Bulgaria at first. We were looking in Africa, the Democratic Republic of Congo, and we were actually paired with a brother and sister, 5-year-old and 3-year-old. And unfortunately, the country didn't best educate families there on what an orphanage is, and when they give their child up to the orphanage, what that means. And so once we were placed with the brother and sister, they contacted the mother to let her know that they will be adopted by Americans. And she actually went back and pulled them out of the orphanage. And so us and other families, it was pretty traumatic for us as well as the Congolese people that the country decided to stop all adoptions, international adoptions, and better educate the people there in Africa, in Congo, so that they realize when they're giving their rights away, what that truly means. And so that was hard for us, but our agency said, based off of your age, based off of the length of marriage, you still qualify for Bulgaria, Latvia, Lithuania. And so which country would you be interested in having your file moved to? And they said, we are struggling to find a family for this one little boy with Down syndrome, Alex, our first. And we spent 2 weeks talking about it, thinking about it, making sure that this would be the right route, and then decided to move forward with Bulgaria. So then we kind of had to look on the map and see where Bulgaria was and start learning about it. Yeah, you don't hear too much about that country, but we learned a lot. So
you are now Team Bulgaria. And that is one thing that's interesting, that we, even as adoptees, we hear from non-adoptees, there's things that they wouldn't have realized. But as we go through this process, Chris and I are so shocked on other types of adoption that certain countries won't adopt to certain types of people and won't adopt to you based on race, gender, how long you've been married. and that there's limitations even in our own countries in religion in North America. And you brought up a really great point as well about people not being properly educated, and some of the stories of corruption that we've looked into. A lot of parents are being lied to, and they think that they're sending their kids to a sponsorship program to never hear from them again. And that even, So it's very interesting for me to hear that based on your file, there's restrictions that you can only pull from countries. And it's almost like you're applying for college, which is ridiculous.
Yeah, in every country. And I understand some of the regulations from each country. Like I know, sadly and unfortunately, Russia, because of the relations between the leader, the Russian president said that no Russian child will ever be adopted family. Well, Americans are adoptive, the number one adoptive country for international adoptions. And so unfortunately, several, thousands of children from Russia are not being adopted because so many adoptions occur from the States. Another regulation was India, for example. The age for a family to adopt, they both had to be 35 years old, husband and wife. And so a younger family, like we started adopting, I believe I was 27 and she was 25. And so we would have to wait for 10 years before we could qualify for India. And so that just leaves not a very big window for a lot of families to adopt.
And the fact that you just reiterated that she was 25 and starting to adopt, creating a family of 6. I'm 33.
No, at 25, I was not mature enough to even take care of myself. Well, no, I take that back. I take that back. I think I was 25 when I opened my gym. But even then, not at any mental headspace, financial or place to even think about that. So it's just amazing. It's truly amazing. So
thank you. Yeah.
So on to our next question. What are the most challenging aspects of parenting in your family?
I would say communication between the two of us. And we both have, I guess we're both type A personality. So we have a pretty strong structure. It's taken a few years. And then every time you add on another adoption or bring another child into the family, the whole schedule kind of goes out the window and you have to relearn the schedule again, right? And so, we adopted our first in 2014. 2016, we adopted 2 at one time, and that's a pretty fun story. And then in 2018, we brought home our 4th. And so right when we had kind of a smooth sailing, schedule, we got that itch again and got the idea we actually are doing all right. There's another kid out there that can really benefit from a loving home. Mm-hmm. Can we do this? And so we're right past that 2-year mark now with our 4th. And, we have our schedule down. We both are very physically active. We both eat really well. We handle our stresses. And so, now we're just enjoying the life that we have with 4 in our home.
Wow.
Yeah.
Chris, we can never complain about our schedules ever again.
No, not at all. It makes me now feel kind of bad about me saying to one of my relatives, one of my brothers, I'm like, I'm so busy and I got so much going on. And compared to Jeremy, no, I got nothing going on compared to Jeremy. So, and even just talking to people that have, relatives, friends, 1 or 2 kids, they're like, 2 and done. They don't have any issues. So to think that, you went in knowing, I was telling Ron actually at the gym today, I said, hey, we're interviewing Jeremy. And I said, that guy needs to be canonized or sainthood or something because he's a better person than me. I just will be honest and upfront about that. And he's a saint. So
I don't take that very well. I'll say thank you, but it's hard for me to because I
for
know
our
like,
listeners right now, he's turning really red. He's smiling. He's covering his face with his hands.
I just
Chris
no,
is
I'm just
awkwardly scratching his head. Men showing emotions. Everybody, here we go.
I'm kind of sweating. I'm like, okay.
I'm fine. I feel great. Let's bask in it. Let's bask in this.
But yeah, it's just the more I asked Ron about it, and I don't think Ron knows so much, but what he did tell me, it was just even before this interview, I'm still trying to digest it, and it's just really amazing.
I just forget the fact, like it's our normal, but for others, it's like, how on earth do you do that? It's kind of like when I heard you have jobs, like my jaw drops. Like, how on earth can you balance having 4 jobs? That's amazing that you're able to have the art, or like I just look at different people that can do amazing things, like wake up day in and day out and go to the gym and take care of their family and go to work and all this stuff. And like, it's cool that, you might be inspired by me or wowed by me, but, I do the same thing for you or for anybody else. Like, don't forget the fact that, how influential you are to other people.
Yeah. And I think it's definitely, that idea of everything is relative. What has been the biggest reward of creating your family?
Oh, that's a great question. Probably just seeing the joy of them being in a family and just realizing, like, yeah, they may look different, or they may do things differently, but this is the family that we have set up, and the joy that they have with eating together a meal with a family, or wrestling, just the small things that are in and out that people might take for granted or don't realize. I remember just to children that may never have had that chance. It's been a lot of fun. So people like it's so hard. Like, how do you deal with a kid in a wheelchair? Well, I don't look at it as a kid in a wheelchair. I look at it as a child, my child, and maybe we can't do this, but we can definitely do this. So let's do this and enjoy it. So.
What do you wish, if anything, that you could tell people that you often hold back from saying?
Oh, man.
That's a spicy one.
I tend to hold my tongue as much as possible, just because, I don't know where everyone's coming from. Yeah. And I give them the benefit of the doubt. And they may not know some of the terminology or some of the changes that have been made within the culture to really keep people at, to give equality among all different groups of people. Mm-hmm. And so I try to be patient with and best lovingly explain to them some of the phrases, I think, that may have been used at some point that isn't used anymore. Yeah. So like the R word, I'm not a big fan of it. And most of the people in my circles aren't either, but every once in a while I still hear it, and it's like nails on a chalkboard.
Yeah.
It literally, like, my head snaps like this. It's just like, if you want to find me anywhere, just say that word. And I'm like,
Yep. Agreed.
And I'm ready to probably, hate to say it, but fist fight you.
Exactly. Like, do I have the time and energy and effort? And do I need to be the voice every single time for that? Do I let it slide? Or, you know what I mean? Like,
you got to pick your battles kind of thing. It's like, yeah.
And that's another thing too that people don't realize, and often I find that's prevalent in our society, that with different groups, minority groups, whether it's like ethnic, whether it's feminist, gender, alternative needs, it is not your responsibility to educate people who aren't otherwise understanding. Mm-hmm. So oftentimes people will feel as though they're doing a great thing by being like, well, you teach me, but you don't need to teach them. Yep. You can point them in the direction of resources, but it is not your responsibility to teach people how to people.
Yeah. But you'd be surprised. I mean, sometimes people are people, and sometimes people are the worst, you know?
And that's also true.
Yeah. Even like the racist stuff I get online, people always say, you know, they want me to kind of educate them on that. And it's just like, look,
that's
not, no, like you need to kind of do your due diligence and do some research and educate yourself. And even myself, like, I think for all of us, there's always room to grow and learn. But unfortunately, I think some people, especially, I mean, look, the pandemic, I think people are so kind of hunkered down that you could totally miss out on all sorts of stuff, you know? Not that that's an excuse, but definitely it kind of goes back to just thinking of you as an individual and the amount of patience you must have, or you're just really good at like, kind of just like you said, biting your tongue and just saying woosah, woosah type of thing, and just kind of taking a deep breath. I would assume that you would kind of get to a point where you kind of master those moments where you know when to interject and when to not engage, type of thing. And
reading the room and like viewing that not everyone is even owed your story. That's a huge thing that we've learned with adoptees and adoptive families, people who are non-adoptees. And this is just a teachable moment for people. Though you find out somebody is adopted or they might have an alternative need or whatnot, just because it's different from you doesn't mean it's your right to learn about it. And if that person isn't emotionally ready to tell you, then kind of back off. Right? Like, you know, even your story, it's very special and it's wonderful. But just because it's different, it's not like, you know, I don't know how to phrase it properly.
Well, I like how Jeremy phrased it as it's not a kid in a wheelchair, you know, where a lot of people view that they just hyper focus on the wheelchair. It's like, oh man, look, it's a wheelchair. And it's like, look, the focus is a living being here person. That is just an extension of them. Like, why do we gotta like make it weird, you know?
Like you with your tattoos, like people automatically judge like, oh man, this guy must be this, that, and whatever. But
all the time. How many questions? Are you in a gang? Have you been to prison? Like all these questions just based on just tattoos and what people think of tattoo culture, you know? And
ironically,
obviously,
I've been to prison.
Really? What?
No.
Oh, God. I was like, wait, wow, there's so much I don't know about Claire. But it's going back to that idea that some people are still kind of stuck in these dark ages of, you know, what people think about certain things nowadays. And, you know, times are changing. You know, I think it's important to try to keep your finger on the pulse with what's going on, you know, and honestly, just me personally, like, I don't know much about this community just because it is a little intimidating. It is like, I don't want to say the wrong thing. I don't know how to act. I don't know, you know, like what is the decorum, you know? And so because of my insecurities, I don't engage. And I think that that's kind of not right, you know? And I think that that's why I was so excited to talk to you, because I want to kind of immerse myself more into this community.
Right. I mean, a lot of people don't have a whole lot of experience with people with special needs. And so it's a great opportunity for me. I get this more often, which I never thought would happen, but I get other parents that say, hey, could we do a play date so that my kids can have a better understanding and kind of learn from your kids and realize like, hey, you know, like there are some kids that use walkers or some kids in a wheelchair or that may not talk and things like that. And absolutely, let's bring them together. It's more than fine, you know, and it's beautiful to see, you know,
that's awesome because that normalizes it. I think that's kind of ultimately what we're doing with this podcast is we're trying to normalize adoption in general because it's such a taboo topic. It's things people don't like discussing because there's lots of trauma there. It's lots of, as you just said, there's so many moving parts with your kids and how you adopted them in the process. It's like you should just feel dizzy just thinking about it and you lived it, you know? So yeah, that's amazing. I think that's great to, definitely have kids to expose them to your kids because, you know, you don't want them to grow up never having ever seen someone that has special needs, you know, and that would just be like,
one thing I would say for any parents that are listening right now, a wonderful, great resource and a wonderful way to help your children make the world better. I was a part of a program called Best Buddies in high school. Best Buddies is a really great program. What it does, it matches children who have alternative needs with children who are within the general populace of the high school. It's really great for both ends because for children who have alternative needs, it teaches them how to interact and it breaks down the barrier on both sides. So when I was in it, it was really great. Once a week, we would talk on the phone. We didn't really text back then, but I bet now I'd at them on TikTok or whatever.
You FaceTime, you could
FaceTime,
Snapchat, all that stuff.
Yeah, and so you would engage in them, and at first you're given, it was really great, these rigorous, instructions, and then you have them come out with your friends and you do events, but then it became a thing where my best buddy and I he's my favorite friend on Instagram. Like I find that his content is way better than anything else other than Chris's, but Best Buddies and having your children and even just involving yourself in a lot of these really worthy causes. So I think if anyone has any questions for us, we'll put our email at the end and questions for you about resources. And this can be an ongoing conversation.
What has raising your children taught you about life?
Patience. Absolutely. So we have a schedule and we stick to it as best we can, but obviously things don't always go to plan, right?
Yeah.
So in nursing, they have something called triage where you have to decide what's the thing that needs to be handled first. And so sometimes when you have 4 kids, you have milk spilled over here, crying over here, a dirty diaper over here, and something else going on. And then you have to pause for a second, take a deep breath and realize, okay, what is the most important thing that needs to be handled immediately? And go from there and just realize like you can have a plan, but you're not always going to stick to that plan. And so just be patient and realize like you're doing the best you can, and they're happy, they're eating, they're sleeping, they're in a home. So like it may not be ideal or like what you want 100% of the time, but you have to realize like they're safe and they're loved. And so, if they're in a home like that, then that's great.
That's the analogy with what's been going on too. It's really good.
Yeah, I think a lot of parents beat themselves up that they're not doing enough or that their house or life isn't perfect, right? And just to realize like, even if you still had everything 100% in order, like it's okay. Like if there's always going to be laundry, there's always going to be dirty dishes, it's never complete. So just kind of enjoy the process of little things rather than like, oh, once I have all this done, then I'll be happy. Try to enjoy each step throughout the way. So
yeah, that's just a life lesson, I think. Like that's amazing. I love that.
Yeah, and the analogy too that I've been told is that when you're in a situation, when you're throwing multiple balls in the air, if all of the balls were to fall at once, which 2 would you grab? And like those are the 2 most important things, right? And then the 2 that you consistently grab. And that leads into our next question. And I think it's something that, parents struggle with in general. But I think that you knowing what you want best for your children, what plans do you and your wife have in place for the future to protect your children throughout their life?
So my wife and I care a lot about our health. And so we want to stay as healthy as possible for as long as possible. So the choices that we make day in and day out, we're just considering this a long-term investment in our own personal health and wellness so that we can be the best parents we can for our children right now when they're 50 pounds and 10 and under, or 10 years from now when they're, early adults and then so on. And so we value the time that we have at the gym. We spend a little bit more on food than the average person, but we want to make sure the food is good quality and so that we're fueling our bodies with what's necessary. We make sure that we get enough sleep so that we can function day in and day out. And, we handle our stresses the best ways that we can. For us, it's at the gym and getting the stress out and having that social interaction with the adults and the classes that we attend. And so we do put a lot of investment in our own personal health and wellness so that we can be the best parents we can be day in and day out. So
in terms of making sure that your children are taken care of no matter what, are there things in place that you guys have considered? Because I know that you probably have had to think about this a little bit more pragmatically versus some other parents. You need to have things in place. Like, so things, for example, the roommate program. So for Chris and those who may not know, there's a wonderful different variations around the world, but the roommate program, it's where your child, if possible, can gain some independence and they live with a roommate. It's someone who has been, who's been trained, and then it winds up being a wonderful partnership. So are there programs in place that you've looked at that perhaps other parents would find interesting or?
Yeah, absolutely. So I should probably tell you that what I do for work is I'm an adaptive PE teacher at a special needs school. And so I run the program there, and there's a hot tub and there's a pool that's accessible, and all the students receive aquatic therapy, and whether it's for sensory needs for kids with autism or those that are really tight with cerebral palsy, can give them massages and stretch them out. Physical therapy comes in there and works in the pool as well with some of the students. Swimming skills for those just for safety in the pool, recreational, all different areas. And 3 of my boys actually attend the school. And so I'm able to see them at school as well. But as the students progress and the families move on from elementary into middle and high school, then the staff and secondary start to educate the parents about options for later on in life and transitioning from being a high school student into being an adult. And there's life skills training. So you and I would graduate high school at 18. In Utah, they can go until 22, and kids with IEPs and continue to learn those life skills. So whether it's taking public transportation, working, or living on their own, we have an apartment there in the school where they learn to, do their laundry, make their bed, a shower schedule, all these different opportunities for children and young adults to be able to learn some of the skills, the life skills, so that they can do as best as they can once they're done at 22. So
that's amazing.
So cool.
Educators there have the resources that hand out to the parents, and most school districts, the special education department has either social workers or people in the administrative level that have what the state had there for people with special needs.
Well, that's nice to know that those systems are in play, because I didn't even know this stuff existed. Like, this is great.
Sometimes you get a diagnosis right at birth. You get your child, and then the doctor child and shares, the delivery was smooth. I'd just like you to know that your child has Down syndrome, and then maybe the mother has never heard or known anybody or know anything about Down syndrome. And so they're like, here's some brochures, here's some information about that. But just the emotional roller coaster of, I have to learn so much more. And just to remind families that you don't have to know everything day one. You're going to learn it along the process. So me with a 7-year-old, like I still have 10 years of learning before they're going to become an adult. So, yeah.
Here we go. What can we teach children to make the world more accessible for your children?
I guess it depends on the child, right?
Yeah.
So like some of the kids that I've seen at the, right, they are just so excited to see and wave and talk to my children. Others, maybe they've never been around that. So I think a lot of it comes back to the parent, and the parent educating the child in some way, like realizing, hey, not every child looks like you, not every child walks like you, and likes the things that you may like. And so let's be respectful and just teaching them the basic, golden rule skills, I guess, for all people. Right. Is just to respect the differences. Like some may like one sport while may like another, or one team and another team, but you can still be friends and learn from them.
Yeah. Yeah. So it's really more just exposure at the end of the day, for sure.
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
What are some things that you've found that you enjoy about having your children with all different alternative needs? Like some things that you're like, oh, this is actually amazing.
Yeah. Their contentment with life. I've seen some typical children that get really upset over some things that my children would never bother them. So like some of my boys will play with a toy that, they could play with all day, while others, they get bored after a video game or after a movie. And what's the next thing? And for my boys, they're just content with, swinging on a swing or, throwing a ball. And the fact that they're just genuinely happy throughout the day. And some parents think, or forget the fact that the simple things in life are just beautiful.
Yeah, it's your kids sound like they are truly in all ways, shapes, and forms, like living in the moment. And I think that is something that all people, like, why do you think Headspace and all these meditation apps exist? Because we as, high functioning people cannot do that. We are so distracted. We are always attracted to drama, and just like you said, just our attention spans are short. And that's amazing that they can really live in the moment. And I wish I could be in the moment more, but my mind is always all over the place. So that's really cool.
One of my friends got me a book, Ferdinand the Bull, and I never read that. And I
heard that. Yeah.
My son, Alex. And, that's exactly how Ferdinand in the book, like he's just happy to be under this tree and smelling the flower.
Yeah.
And I was like, this is totally Alec. Like he could.
That's like me too.
Yeah. There's all this other stuff going on in the world, and it doesn't even bother and faze him, because he's happy with the swing that he has or the ball that he has. And if I could just have the joy and in the day in and day out that he has, it's a gift that he has for sure.
That's my favorite book too. I feel like that's me as well. Chris, we've talked about how I can be happy with whatever. I'm like, okay, that's fine.
Yeah, right. Minus the obviously glaring struggles that your kids have to, endure. What other struggles do they have to kind of face due to their alternative needs? Right.
So, we adopted all between 3 and 5 years old, so we don't have a lot of history of their developmental years and the trauma that was maybe on them in that institution. And so some things trigger them, and we don't even realize it until it's too late. And we're like, what is going on? What just happened? Like if a song comes on, or pictures that they may see, like, we're really sorry. We don't know what occurred for those first 3 years of your life, but just move on. We're going to move from there and try to, realize that we won't play that song anymore, or we're not going to say those words like John, right? We changed his name, but one day I decided, let's say his name that they had in the orphanage. And when I said that name, his eyes got big and he was super scared. And I was like, okay, I'm never saying that name around him anymore, because he was terrified. And so just learning that as a parent, like an adopted parent, like there's going to be some baggage of, the institutionalization. Or Simon, for example, he was the youngest in the orphanage. I was like, where is he picking up oh, they probably were doing this or messing with him or telling him to do this kind of stuff. Yeah. And so working through that, and just being okay with like, this is where we're starting and it's not his fault and we'll just work through this however long it takes. So.
And with regards to their medical history, like you literally weren't giving anything. Like it was just kind of like there was no records, zero.
Yeah, pretty much.
Okay.
Not a whole lot of. We did like know if like 50% of people with Down syndrome have heart defects, and Simon had heart surgery, so that was on his medical report, is that he had heart surgery, or like the age, their height and weight, or length and weight, and all that, because all the boys were well underweight when they were born. So like we don't know the history of the mom or any of that stuff. So we just kind of like, well, they still need a family, and we're more than happy to just start where we can and just go from there.
And I think you're approaching it in such a different and almost like altruistic way of realizing that your children are going to come with baggage and triggers, in that other adoptive parents don't consider that. I think that even from a standpoint of an adoptee, and I don't have, this history, I was in a different country, in an institution and whatnot, and I come with tons of baggage. And so the fact that you assess each child individually and you're tailoring your home and your behavior to allow that child to process and be so successful, I just think that is a huge lesson for prospective and current adoptive parents. And I think it's really great for you to come at this, that you are viewing this as your children's story. This is their story and their needs, and you're really putting them first. And it just, I think that's something that I would like all of us to learn for each other, not even just.
No, yeah. And I think a lot of adoptive parents feel that, or it's hard for them to accept that adoptees have trauma. All adoptees, in my opinion, have trauma. And a lot of adoptive parents have reached out and said, this upsets me to hear this because I have an adoptive kid. And I'm like, look, this is not about upsetting you. This doesn't mean that you're not a good parent. You just need to understand that like we all are products of a circumstance. And as long as you can communicate that and have a conversation about it, that's a step forward. But to kind of flip it and say, what does this say about me as a parent? Like you said, parents can sometimes be really tough on themselves. It's not really about the parent so much. It's just acknowledging it and working through it rather than just ignoring it. Because I think too often adoptees, we just ignore these things, and myself included, have suppressed so much that I didn't realize until doing birth parent search and doing these things, that I realized, holy smokes, like I'm broken in so many ways, and I thought I was doing well, but and it's not a bad thing. Like I think too often we, people think like, oh, trauma, that's a bad. I mean, yes, it's not great, but it could be used as a positive. We can turn these negative things into positives, and I think that that's the point of this also, is just owning our adoption stories and not hiding them and not being ashamed of them or not talking about them, because, we all need to heal as adoptees. And the only way to do that is to have a conversation about it.
And it also, just on that vein too, it's even scientific. There's been research done that adoptees are more predisposed to things like addiction, mood disorders, attachment disorders, mental health issues, and that when you have these predispositions, as well, you don't have the medical records. I just recently went through a situation where I have no answers because I have no medical records. No family history. And so now, and I've done all that, as I've exhausted all of my resources other than finding my birth parents, which to me is just, and so for people like me, I'm lucky enough that I can, petition through my government to get these records. And I see situations like your families and Chris's, and you don't have that luxury, right? There's no, it's amazing. What languages or behaviors should society avoid that are negative to your child or condescending?
Yeah. Like I said before, I'm patient with people because I've used those terms before, and I was ignorant to the fact that this was pretty offensive to folks, and those that I've loved, I've had to correct and lovingly share this is why. And so one of the things that I try to educate is like, oh, are you going to have your own children? And I was like, well, they are my children. I think what you mean is, are we going to have any biological children, right? And sometimes I feel like saying, well, that's really none of your business if I can or can't, or if my wife can or can't, because that's a pretty serious, topic. A stranger just to ask, like, my wife's reproductive ability or my reproductive ability, or both of ours. But I try to keep it light, like, oh, I think 4 is pretty busy enough as is. So, like, maybe one day if we decide to move forward, we'll definitely let everybody know, kind of thing. But I usually share, like, lightly, like, oh yeah, they're all of our children. These ones are just adopted. Maybe we'll now decide to have biological children. So it's like, oh yeah, of course they're your children, but I meant like your biological, do you want to have your biological children? I was like, yeah, we'll see. Like, there's still time, I guess, sort of thing. So just clarifying, like, just because they're adopted, they're ours, like, and we're theirs. So,
of course. Yeah. To me, I am very reactive. I'm very confrontational, but like, even just hearing people say, oh yeah, that's what I meant. It's like, no, that's not what you meant, because that's not what you said. Think about what you're about to say before you speak. It's like those moments where I'm like, probably shouldn't have said it like that or whatever. But yeah, I think your approach is definitely much better.
And I think
also too,
go back with my wife and we joke about, you wouldn't believe what this lady at the grocery or something. So, we definitely have a time to bounce back and just, like, laugh about it. So,
yeah.
My friend and I play what we call, like, ignorance bingo sometimes. We're like, guess what? I got this card. Like, I got this slot. Another terminology, too, since we're on the vein of education for people, please stop saying real. Like, my adoptive mother's not a hologram.
Yeah.
She's like, like, there's not, what is real? Like, like, people are like, do you know your real mom? It's like, huh?
But that's what I love about shows like, have you seen Atypical?
Yeah.
Oh, have you seen it, Jeremy?
No, I haven't. I've heard it's on Netflix, right?
Yeah, it's amazing.
It's so good.
And then like things like Modern Family and like The New Norm, like there's all these shows that are just showing that there is no more normal. Like, what is normal now? Normal really is blended. And that's kind of, what I see normal as,
Yeah.
And also making jokes, like, everyone's like, oh, you're probably adopted. If people can just stop making those jokes.
Yeah.
Right. And like being and like, I'm sorry, Hollywood, if you could stop making adoption as a negative twist, like, I'm adopted.
Yeah.
For shame. Like, just stop. It's, sorry to cut you off, but
it's beautiful of a thing to, just run it through the mud like that.
Not everyone is built the same. Right. So when people make jokes and, even on Avengers, they're like, he's adopted. I'm like, okay, that's like, I was just like,
oof, that's going to rock the boat a little bit for some people, for sure.
How can medical, educational, and other civil servant individuals be more supportive of people with alternative needs?
Education, right? And exposure, like we've said before. But I think within the curriculum, I think the ability to maybe shadow or go observe within a community. So at our school, rotations for physical therapy and occupational therapy, a lot of the students come through to see what we do and be able to work with a population that definitely can benefit from it, because not everybody in physical therapy is going to be working with athletes the entire time. They're going to be working with all different populations. And so one of the physical therapists at my gym was like, one of the greatest rotations that I had was at a special needs school, because it really caused me to think about each and every individual and what is necessary for them to be able to live the longest, healthiest life that they can live. Right. And so he's like, it's opened my eyes up to a whole nother population and a whole different field within physical therapy that I had never considered. And it was interesting because I talked to the physical therapist at my school, and she was like, orthotics and chairs and all this, that's my specialty. I'd have to go back to school to learn working with, somebody who's 100%, functioning really well. And that's just a whole different area of study. So,
So out of your boys though, who's the most like the biggest personality that's really extroverted in their own way?
Yeah. So John in the chair, he is a big flirt, and he runs the school there. He has a power chair, so he drives that thing around and waves to everybody and winks.
Oh, that's amazing.
He's just, he could be the mascot or the president of the school, and, and Simon is the most vocal. He's
Simon's
been learning
my dude.
English for two years now, and so he's been picking up words here and there, and he definitely runs the show. Even though he's the youngest, he's the largest and has a huge personality, and so he wants to let us know if one of his brothers isn't doing what they should be doing, and so he continually comes back and lets us know. And
that's amazing.
So, and that's another thing too, is that English isn't their first language.
Right. So they've heard Bulgarian only for the first 4 years. And so when we did the school assessments, we're like, realize they've only heard English for a year or 2 years or however. So the more you speak to them, they're going to continue to pick up on all these terms, and then it's gonna take a little bit. But once they have it down, it may not be as cognitive as you think. It may just be like they're still learning what that means.
Mm-hmm. Well, yeah, my brothers and I obviously only heard Korean for the first year and a half or so of our lives. And so when we got to the States, I remember we had severe speech impediments because we were learning English. And I remember we were in like a ESL class for like a year or two. I don't remember anything that was said in that class or taught. I just remember they would teach us by saying, if you get this right, you get an M&M. So my brothers and I are sitting at this table, and it was this competition, who could get the most M&Ms. I could not tell you what they had us do. I just remember these M&Ms, and I was just like, I just want more M&Ms. So I'm going to say it how they want me to say it. And that's all I remember. But yeah, that's what I think a lot of people don't realize also with transracial adoptions and from other countries, that is also another kind of roadblock. Especially if you're getting a child that's a little older or, has been listening to a certain language for so long. So,
absolutely. And 3 out of our four boys are nonverbal. And a lot of the questions that I get is, do your boys talk? And lightly and lovingly, I explain, I talk enough for all 4 of them, but Simon talk. And so, but they definitely let me know what they want in their own special way. Like John has a horn on his chair, or he raises his hand, right? Or Alex will take my hand and pull me around to the house for different things, And so they may not be verbal, but they're definitely getting what they need to get across in a certain way. And we're going to continue to work on being able to communicate in their own special way. But seeing that it's my wife and I who communicate the most with them, once we kind of learn it, then we can also teach the circle that is.
Yeah, you're developing your own language, which is amazing. I think that's it's almost like this uncanny superpower that you can just communicate without using words, which is, obviously not easy, but you guys are around each other so much, you kind of build that power. That's beautiful.
Simon sounds so sassy. I'm so excited to. I hope we get to meet him when all of the kids. They all sound so cool. In what way do you believe that your day-to-day routine differs from other parents' routines?
Well, that's a good question. I think the amount of assistance each child needs. So All our boys are in diapers still. Remember, they're aged 10, 9, 8, and 7. Brushing teeth, like putting clothes on. All those require assistance from us. Well, I'm assuming, and we don't have any typical children, but I'm assuming that some 10-year-olds and 9-year-olds can probably dress themselves and brush their teeth and feed themselves. So just the amount of assistance that each one needs. And so that can be scary to some families, realizing. But for us, it's just another way to be able to serve, our children and give them the best life that they can give. And so it may seem mundane or repetitive, but finding the joy in that process, right? And realizing, right now they may not be doing it, but in a few years they might be independent in that certain task. But if they're not, we've enjoyed it for so many years already that we'll just continue to do that. So,
and touching back on what we were saying earlier, but I think your kids are also in their own ways teaching both of you to be more present. And I think that that's just so amazing to me, like so amazing.
Yeah, it's definitely a symbiotic relationship between the two of us. It's like, we're giving them the opportunity to, to work on pottying or toileting, but really it's working on our patience and our being in the moment, like you're saying. And so people are like, they spend a lot more time, maybe watching TV or sports or doing things that, we might not be able to get to do, but we get to be with our boys and they realize their reliance upon us and the need that we have. So we have this great closeness within our family. So
that's amazing. All right. If other parents are setting up a play date for children with alternate needs, what are things they should ask or consider?
A lot of what I've noticed is sensory needs is a really big thing. And children, with, lights might be too bright or sounds might be too loud, or if length of time, maybe like you plan on an hour, but it may only last for 20 minutes and being okay with that. Right. Because sometimes kids can only handle certain amount. So like, for example, I took my boys, I wanted to take them to a University of Utah basketball game. And I thought, it would probably be better to start them off on something maybe not as energetic and see how they handle it. And so we went to, like a high school basketball game and where there's not as many people. And if they handle that, then maybe go to the community college and see how they handle a larger crowd. And then so on, a women's basketball, and then maybe a men's basketball from there. Same thing, like one of our boys, John, loves hockey. And so some people at the gym, their kids, so goes, yeah, exactly, right? Go Canada. So we thought,
welcome, John. I'll take you.
We'll start with Pee Wee hockey, and
because
he's really enjoyed like the Mighty Ducks movies, and then if that works,
who doesn't? I mean, come on,
quack quack quack, Mr. Ducksworth, quack quack quack.
Exactly, and then maybe one day we'll move to the professional level and be able to watch those games, but
we'll just myself.
They handle it and how long they can really enjoy that full game. Maybe it's only half the game.
So spoiler alert right now for Atypical, fast forward 30 seconds if you don't want to have it ruined. On that show, the girlfriend of the protagonist, Sam, she actually organizes an entire dance with the silent dance with the headphones so that her boyfriend can come to the dance. So that has been something too that's been a really interesting. Yeah, so you really do need to watch it. It's pretty great. Also, if you like penguins, watch that show.
That's my spirit animal. Well, this has been so wonderful. And I think, I just want to thank you for sharing all of this because this is all very personal. And I think just like anything else, with topics like this and adoption in general, like the point of all this is to have the conversations and to open up and be a little vulnerable. But more importantly, to educate, to bring awareness to things that people don't think about, so.
Yeah, well, thank you for having me. I absolutely love to be a voice for my family. And I also want to reiterate that this is just our family and our experience, right? Like somebody's international adoption may be completely different. So don't base how your adoption may go if you're looking for a Bulgarian adoption or a special needs adoption or anything based off of ours, because every story is completely different. And so just be patient with with your own story, right? As much as you can to look back and reflect. This is why I love coming on podcasts and sharing with it, because it brings me back to those memories of going back to Bulgaria or meeting Alex for the first time, or spending that week where it was just Simon and I, exploring Bulgaria together, and all the different stories that come on. So thanks for having a show like this so that I can just reflect back on all the great memories that I've had with my boys.
And one thing, also, I know Claire doesn't know this, but if you want to share your Instagram handle, which I love.
Bucket of Bulgarians.
Yeah. When I first saw it, I was like, what does that have to, what's going on? And then I saw his page. I was like, that is really cute. Like, I love that. Like,
I'm always asked, where do you come up with any bucket of Bulgarians? Well, one Christmas, we had a secret Santa, and every single day they would drop off a present for the boys, knock on the door and, open the door, and there's, toys or outfits or blankets or something for them. Well, on the final day, which was Christmas Eve, we get a knock on the door and open it, and there's this guy there. I don't even know who he is. And he's like, I'm not the secret Santa.
You're just like,
yeah, I own Madsen Cycles, and the person that wants to that's your secret Santa wanted to gift this $2,500 bike to you, and it's got a giant bucket on the back. It seats 4 children, and it has a so he brought it out to me. We're just thrilled. The kids, we put all the kids in the bike and ride all around, and so I changed my handle from some basic Jeremy name to bucket of Bulgarians.
Jeremy 0722.
Yeah.
I thought, let's make my account more about my children and the experiences they have riding around in the bike. And so all throughout the neighborhood, we'll go to the park or the playground or the pool, and always ride the bike around, ringing the bell and waving to neighbors and stuff. And so it's just a fun time for our family just to go all around.
I mean, all your photos on your Instagram page of your boys, I mean, you can just see just how happy they are, and I think that's one thing that I just resonates every time I see a post. I'm like, man, those kids just look happy, and it's great.
And I've gotten some flack from social media about this, and it's fine. But the thing is, it's my account, and I want to put my best foot forward for my children. And the last thing I want was to ever throw them under the bus for anything. And so people are like, your account's not real life. And I'm like, well,
whose Instagram is why are you held to those standards?
Instagram is all about showing the only the good parts and not showing the true. I mean, what? Who said that?
I'm sorry.
I want to know who said that.
No, you don't. you don't want to know who it.
I could show the really, really hard days, and things like that. But people should realize everybody's gonna have hard days here and there, and I don't need to put that out there because there are other accounts that do that. And so I thought, people like to smile, they like to laugh, and so
positivity,
life lighthearted, right? And there's other accounts that you can follow that maybe are more negative and more raw, I guess, than mine, but that's okay because it's my platform for what I want to be able to post, and so
absolutely,
yeah.
And just in discussing this with you, I've realized that we also haven't touched on the fact that yes, you are an adoptive parent, but also being a parent of alternative needs children. What are some things that you would suggest for maybe some parents that have found our podcast based on these search terms that you have done to foster and keep your marriage healthy or your mental health? You talked about the gym, but what are some things that you would do as advice for, your time is limited to maintain your marriage and create a wonderful marriage?
Yeah. So one thing that we do is with our strict schedules, we put the kids down at 8 every night. And so from 8 to like 10:30, that's our time. So we work extremely hard from, 3 o'clock to, 8 to make sure that dinner's on the table, everything's clean and ready for the next day of school. Lunches are packed, clothes are out, and we're working together as this team to get all this done. And then once they're all in bed, then it's our time to watch the show that we want to watch, put the movie on that we want to watch, play a game that we want to do, whatever we want to plan, then we'll plan that. And COVID has really thrown a curveball with, date nights and things like that. But having that, a strong babysitter circle that, we can go to, like a family member, or if you don't have family around, educating one of our kids. John has a G-tube. And so teaching a babysitter that may be comfortable with G-tubes, like how to properly use that. And so it seems that other special needs families are more than happy to help because they realize the importance of having that time with your spouse to be able to get away for a moment and go enjoy a meal or go hang out with some other friends. And so that's what we do is have that time from 8 on, and then, a date night here and there. So
that's a good question. Good answer.
And then also too, just in terms of what I do in daily life, in terms of the commercial built environment, what are some things that could assist you in being able to take your children on outings to like concert halls, events, or whatnot? What are some items people who create built environments or are facility planners can do to make it easier for your kids to go places?
Absolutely. I think IDEA and some of the federal laws that have been in place to be able to make sure that everything is accessible. And then I think a lot of like plays, for example, they'll have earlier showings or movies theaters have certain time frames that the population knows that there might be a child with sensory needs or children with special needs can attend this movie, and this would be appropriate for their level of development. So some of the ratings, as well as theaters, will have like something written within, if you're purchasing this ticket, know that, this is open and available for all audiences, whether they're sitting in the chair or laying down up front or something along those lines. So I think, that's definitely a big put that can be a big push to better educate certain businesses for inclusivity in all areas. That's great. That's a really good question.
Well, Claire's got all the good questions.
I'm very passionate about this, this all about this, right? So
a lot too, actually, because that really makes me think, so thanks for this question.
So, and I think that'd be really great too. I'm trying to have it so that, we can use this as a platform. In searching for podcasts for other stuff, I realized that you can actually search for things and like specific episodes will come up. Mm-hmm. So in our keywords, I'll put things in our description and whatnot for this. So, but yeah.
Well, Jeremy, thank you so much for taking time out of your very busy day. And, we are so excited to share your story with everyone because it's really amazing. And I think it's, it's inspiring.
I'm just,
thank you. Yeah.
So excited to have this opportunity to talk with you. And also I would recommend all of our users take a moment to reflect on your day and that we can learn something from your children. And We're hoping to maybe start sharing their stories and check out Bucket of Bulgarians. I'm excited. That's gonna be my number.
Yeah.
That's gonna be my number one Instagram. I need to see I need to see if Simon's exactly how I pictured him.
All right. Well, you have a great night. And again, thank you so much.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Okay, so
you guys.
if you'd like to connect with us on Instagram or TikTok, you can find us at
Origins Unknown Podcast.
You can follow my co-host.
Beyond the Tats.
You can find me at
Sea Bear Huntington. We're also on Twitter. Follow us at
Unknown Podcast. If you'd like to visit our website, it's
originsunknownpodcast.com. Also, if you'd like to send us questions, share your story, or even just say hi, you can send us an email at
hello@originsunknownpodcast.com. Special thanks to Pace Randolph for writing, performing, and producing the audio for our podcast. Follow him on Spotify for more wonderful music.